$3.5 billion main battle tank upgrade. On 10th of January, Peter Dutton, Minister for Defence, announced that the Australian government would be purchasing evolved Abrams tanks and combat engineering vehicles. $3.5 billion would be spent under the Land 907 Phase 2 and Land 8160 Phase 1 projects. The first vehicles will be delivered to Australia in 2024, with the projects expected to achieve initial operating capability in 2025. Army will receive up to 75 M1A2 SEP V3 Abrams tanks, 29 M1150 assault breacher vehicles, 17 M1074 joint assault bridge vehicles, and an additional 6 M88A2 armoured recovery vehicles. Minister Dutton said, quote, "Teamed with the infantry fighting vehicles, combat engineering vehicles, and self-propelled howitzers, the new Abrams will give our soldiers the best possibility of success and protection from harm." End quote. Australian industry involvement will include the intended manufacture of tank ammunition in Australia, sustainment operations, and simulation and training services. Chief of Army Lieutenant General Rick Burr said that tanks and combat engineering vehicles were essential to Australia's ability to contribute to a credible land combat capability integrated with joint and coalition forces. Lieutenant General Burr said, quote, "The M1A2 SEP V3 Abrams protection, accurate and lethal fire, mobility and situational awareness cannot be delivered by any other platform. There are no other current or emerging technologies or combinations of technologies that can yet deliver the capability currently provided by a main battle tank." End quote. Australia is spending over $30 billion on armoured vehicles in the coming years, the bulk of which will be spent on infantry fighting vehicles. There has been debate in Australia on the utility of tanks in the current strategic environment. Back in May 2021, Greg Sheridan, in the Australian newspaper, criticised the purchase, and also the purchase of armoured fighting vehicles under Project Land 400. Sheridan goes as far as to say that it is, quote, "sheer idiocy and anachronistic frivolity," end quote, to purchase tanks and similar heavy tracked vehicles. Sheridan notes that we haven't used tanks once in the last 50 years, despite fighting wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and deploying the ADF to East Timor for peacekeeping operations. Sheridan believes the money could have been spent better elsewhere, such as bolstering our maritime defence capabilities. However, retired Major General Jim Moylan responded, also in the Australian newspaper, that Vietnam was the last time Australia fought, quote, "serious land combat," end quote, and that most of the fighting in Afghanistan was done by our special forces. Moylan believes Australia should have deployed a larger balanced force, including tanks, to Afghanistan. Moylan also said that we learnt by hard experience in Vietnam, Korea, and Papua New Guinea the value of tanks and hard fighting. Indeed, Moylan served in Iraq, where tanks were used extensively by coalition forces, and believes in their value. Royal Australian Navy's landing helicopter docks and landing ship dock are capable of transporting Abrams tanks. In June 2021, during Exercise Sea Explorer, tactical deployment of M1A1 Abrams tanks in amphibious operations was exercised for the first time. Hypersonix Launch Systems signs research deal with University of Sydney. Brisbane-based Hypersonix Launch Systems has signed a master research collaboration agreement with the University of Sydney to research and manufacture the components of a zero-emissions hypersonic spaceplane, a vehicle capable of deploying small satellites into low Earth orbit. Hypersonix Launch Systems was founded in 2019 and aims to provide sustainable, small satellite launch services from Australia using hypersonic scramjet technology. Hypersonic speed is more than 5 times the speed of sound, or Mach 5, which is just over 6,000 km per hour. So what is meant by sustainable? Hypersonix believes that with the explosion in launches that has occurred in the last few years, and with many more to come, the continued use of conventional rocket propulsion is not sustainable or conscientious. They are developing an air-breathing propulsion system that is powered by green hydrogen, so there are no CO2 emissions. The aim is to develop a launch system that is completely reusable. The launch system is comprised of 3 stages. Stage 1 is the reusable boomerang booster rocket that propels the Delta Velos launch vehicle to Mach 5, after which it separates and returns to Earth, landing on a normal runway. Stage 2 is the Delta Velos hypersonic vehicle, which uses scramjet technology to accelerate up to Mach 12, and after separating from the 3rd stage, returns to Earth, also landing on a normal runway. Scramjets are air-breathing, so they do not need to carry oxygen fuel, resulting in weight saving. Stage 3 is the vehicle that will take the payload into space. It has its own rocket propulsion to insert the payload into orbit. So, to reiterate, only the 2nd stage uses scramjet technology. Stages 1 and 3 remain rocket propelled. However, with the 2nd stage being able to fly like a plane, it can maneuver more than a rocket and thus access more satellite orbits from a particular launch site. Returning to the Master Research Collaboration Agreement with the University of Sydney, using next-generation additive manufacturing technology, also known as 3D printing, University of Sydney researchers will develop flight-critical components, including the Space Plane's launch system, further versions of the scramjet engine, testing several material components, and the vehicle fuselage at the University's Sydney Manufacturing Hub. The joint project will start in early 2022, with Hypersonix working with the University of Sydney to develop a series of smaller proof-of-concept launch vehicles to demonstrate the space plane's efficacy. The first of these will be Dart-AE, a technology demonstrator and small version of the Delta Velos, powered by a single Spartan scramjet engine. The Dart-AE is a 3-metre-long, single-use vehicle that is planned to obtain speeds of Mach 7. The design and manufacture will be done entirely in Australia, with the entire vehicle being made through additive manufacturing. Hypersonix has also signed an agreement with US-based Kratos Defence and Security Systems to launch the Dart-AE demonstrator. A Kratos booster system will be used to accelerate the Dart-AE drone to a speed of greater than Mach 5 and release the vehicle. The first test launch is scheduled for early 2023. In contrast to the Dart-AE demonstrator, the Delta Velos is a 5.5-metre vehicle powered by 4 Spartan engines. The first launch of a Delta Velos is scheduled for Q3 2023. In related news, the federal government has officially opened the $14 million Australian Hypersonix Research Precinct at Eagle Farm in Brisbane. The centre can accommodate over 60 staff and provides a space for industry, academia and government teams to collaborate on defence projects focusing on high-speed and hypersonic flight research and technologies. Gilmour Space Technologies rocket test. Queensland-based Gilmour Space Technologies conducted a test fire earlier this month near Toowoomba of what they claim is the most powerful rocket engine ever developed in Australia. Company CEO Adam Gilmour said they achieved the expected full thrust of 110 kilonewtons over 75 seconds. The engine is planned to be used as the main engine that will power the first and second stages of the 3-stage Eris rocket. This follows on from a January 2021 test fire of the main engine that achieved 91 kilonewtons. Gilmour Space Technologies is hoping to launch Australia's first sovereign-made rocket from Queensland sometime in the latter half of 2022 and are currently seeking approvals from the state and federal governments to build a small orbital spaceport at Abbott Point near Bowen, North Queensland. The designs for the assembly building, launch site and fuel storage areas are complete. Gilmour's 25-metre Eris rocket will be able to deliver up to 305 kg payloads into low Earth orbit. This is compared to the 150 kg payload Hypersonix is currently aiming for. Co-founder Adam Gilmour has said that broadband internet constellation satellites are a massive market for them. For example, the SpaceX Starlink constellation has almost 2,000 satellites already in orbit, with many thousands more planned. While SpaceX can launch its own broadband satellites, their competitors are who Gilmour will be targeting. Gilmour are also hoping to develop vehicles that can take people into space. The main goal of this channel is to raise awareness of the defence and space industries in Australia, both industries that I believe are vital to Australia's security and prosperity. The most important input to these industries is people, the scientists, project managers, engineers, technical trades, finance and legal staff, etc. Now is a great time to be working in the defence and space industries in Australia. It wasn't that long ago that Australia didn't have much of a space industry to speak of. There was definitely no Gilmour Space Technologies when I left university. They recently employed their 100th employee, and they say they could increase their workforce to 1,000 employees in the next 5 to 10 years. They currently have over a dozen positions advertised on their website, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to get involved. Beyond the engineering positions you'd expect, they are also after legal counsels, salespeople, welders, and machinists. There are also internships available. And that is just one company. There are a lot of opportunities all around Australia. If you don't know where to start, have a look at the career websites for Boeing Defence Australia, Northrop Grumman, BAE and Lockheed Martin. They are some of the biggest defence industry employers in Australia. Also keep an eye on defence and space news resources on the web. Over time, you'll learn the companies that interest you.